didn't hold it long enough. Is this, hello, hello? How close is this? How close is this supposed to be? Hello? I don't think it's coming through though.
That looks, yeah, that's pretty good. Got the stage right. Okay. You're on, Jim.
Hello? Check, check. Wow, this thing is actually working. Power of electricity. Okay, good morning, everybody. Really good day to talk about solar. When Suzanne was putting the wash up at 8:30 this morning, just before church, I went and looked at our meter and it was running backwards already at 8:30. So today's a good generation day, more power than we're using. So I'll get started. This will be pretty focused. I think we should be able to get out of here around 1 o'clock or so. Okay, people are paying attention. Good to see. Well, just to start off, this is sort of a groundswell thing. There's a few of us that are pretty passionate about solar and why we love the church and why we think this would be a great idea for the church. This is why we're here. I will just say that, not to make this about me and my family, but our family has really benefited from solar. We put it in around 2012. We figure we broke even in about 7 years. Now, the newer tech is cheaper and it's more efficient. So as we'll see through the slides, there's a lot of financial benefit for it. But for us, it's helped a lot with cash flow in retirement. We don't have an electric bill each month. We're running 3 electric cars off of it, so we're not buying gas. It's running our pool pumps all summer. It's running our heating, air conditioning. So it's kind of nice at being utility bill free for the last 10 years. So our calculation is, what we're proposing is that once we put this up over the next 25 years, I'll just get to the headline first. Over the next 25 years, this will deliver just shy of $30,000 in benefits to Zion back into the operating budget each year. So that's sort of the headline. And if you start thinking about the math, what $30,000 a year does for 25 years turns into some pretty big numbers, which we'll see. So this was working before. I don't know.
Yeah, it's on. I know what it is. Hang on. Be right back.
It's always good to have a tech team. How could it work before and not now?
I don't know. Always that
good. Should I try it?
Keep talking, Jim. We'll get it.
Okay. This is the awkward part of the presentation. If anyone has jokes, stories, any more interesting at work stories, there's a few good ones today.
Try now.
And then a miracle occurs. So what we'll discuss today, just first off, just talking about why we think solar is a good idea and why we want to bring it to the church. Secondly, most people, when we talk about solar, people like it, but they're worried about the money. It's going to cost money. So most of this presentation is going to be about funding and the financial analysis that we're doing. I think it's good to know what our other Mennonite churches doing, and a little bit of a spoiler. Southeastern Pennsylvania, for whatever reason, is pretty much behind the curve compared to other parts of the country, and I'm not sure why. I have some theories for that, but anyway, we won't dwell on that. And talk a little bit about what happens when churches put solar up in their community and what happens next. And then we'll wrap it up with question and answer and what people think and see what we want to do after that. Okay, so we believe if we install a solar platform here, we can deliver elimination of $14,000 a year in our PPL bill. I think it's pretty much $14,000. Is that?
This year.
That's right, for this year. And I think it went up, what, about 30% over the last couple of years, something like that. And people probably don't know what SRECs are. We can talk about that a little bit. But there is incentives for renewable energy in Pennsylvania and other states, so that if you provide solar power, you actually get money back by selling the credits in the open market for every kilowatt hour that you generate. And that's free, by the way, if you're a personal solar generator, which is kind of nice. And there is little to no maintenance required. Our 10-year experience, we've spent $0 on any kind of maintenance for our platform. So we're expecting the same or very similar for the church. And the panels themselves have a 25-year warranty. If they don't work, they're replaced for free. Ours are still going strong at 12 years, and we haven't had any issues with those. If we put these up, I'm guessing these will outlive me. You know, I'm getting older, and these things last a real time. So, they'll go for quite a while. And solar's been around for like a really long time. There's panels and installations that have been put up in the 80s and before that are still running and producing. So the technology's been around a long time. It's just the sophistication and the right materials and engineering that goes into it, and the installation people that know what they're doing have made it more accessible over the years. And I think the community, I think, would be interested in knowing about this, and it usually creates a lot of buzz when people are doing engineering and new projects. And I just believe it's wise stewardship. The sun's out there, and it's beaming up enough energy every day to basically power everything. So why would we not use it? And I think, I know people are at different places about this, but you know, it's pollution-free energy for years and years and years, and I think it's only going to help us try to have clean air and clean water over the next generations. So how does this work in terms of design and what it presents? So basically, our thesis is the Ministry of Stewardship is responsible for the building and grounds, paying the bills, keeping things running, taking care of our whole environment. So this is a revenue generator for the Ministry of Stewardship. We already talked about $14,000 a year we wouldn't have to pay once we put these up. I didn't realize this until just recently, but Pennsylvania is the 12th highest electricity rate in the U.S. Did not realize that, and I think we've all seen that hit our electric bills here in the last few years. I also heard just recently that Pennsylvania also is the third highest electricity generation state in the U.S., behind California and Texas, which just an interesting tidbit. It doesn't really play into this too much. And we estimate right now we get an additional $4,300 a year over the next 25 years for the SRECs. We'll talk more about that. So what are they? Does anyone here know what SRECs are? No. Okay. I didn't think so. Those of us with solar probably do. So in, I think, 2004, Pennsylvania was one of a number of states looking ahead, trying to diversify their energy mix. So besides coal, nuclear, natural gas, and so on, they were trying to get more renewables into the mix as a diverse energy source. And back then, they were trying to get utilities to produce 18% of their energy from renewable sources, and specifically solar, 0.5%, which is a very, very low number. That's actually been hit back in 2021. And so now we're like, we're at capacity, and that's one of the reasons that the SRECs have plateaued right around $42, $43 a piece, because there are so many people that are now generating electricity and getting paid for it, the demand isn't as big. So what happens is the utility companies need to prove that they're supplying that much of their electricity to those ratios. And so for a lot of them, it's cheaper just to pay, residents or other people money and take the credits than it is to build out the infrastructure. Although that is changing now. Solar is rapidly advancing in the utilities as well. So for every I know this is getting wonky. So for every megawatt or 1,000 kilowatt hours, you get one credit, and that's worth the $43 on the open market. Okay, I actually talked about that. Talked about that also. And on Friday, I was on a call with a group of people, and there is a House Bill. Let's see, what number is it? House Bill 1467, where the state government is looking at neighboring states and how much electricity is being provided, and the money that's available now for infrastructure build out and solar installation. So Pennsylvania's goal right now is to get 30% renewable by 2030. Our neighbors are a little bit more aggressive. Maryland's trying to get to 50%, New Jersey 50%, New York 70%. And so that's bringing down the cost of electricity in these other states. And they're estimating that getting to the 30% will bring 50 to 70,000 jobs over the next until 2030. So anyway, that's beyond what we're doing here at Zion, but just some of the macro about what's going on in the world of solar and why there's so much additional work being done there. Okay, so the benefits, and these were when we went into this. So we're talking about everything in terms of time. And as my good wife told me, it's like they're going to last longer than 25 years. So don't want people to think that 2050 comes along and the thing's dead. That's not the case. They're going to keep going. Or at that time, and this will sound crazy in science fiction, but at some point, people will put up satellites in low Earth orbit with large arrays and beam the electricity down to Earth. They've tested that. It is feasible, but very, very, very expensive now. But just like everything else, tech gets better. I mean, in the old days, we had whale oil for lamps, then we went to coal, and that has its issues, then natural gas, then nuclear, and everything else. So things continue. Our stories at work in the next 50 years might be a lot different than they are today. So our assumptions are anywhere from a 3 to 5% annual increase in what electric would cost, and that adds to these benefits. The open market for electricity is crazy. For years, it stayed pretty stable, and then all of a sudden, we had this huge increase. So we never really know. And we already talked about this. We'll get the money back from the SRECs. You're now all experts on SRECs, so you know what those are and how we're going to get that money back. We did not put costs in for maintenance, the panels and stuff themselves. And Craig, you can help on this. Aren't the installers going to actually look after it for 10 years? It's not moving parts. Like there's no motors running. It's all electric devices. Rudy would know that better. I mean, the biggest quote moving parts will be the inverters, which we won't get into. But yeah, I mean, it just sits there and it works all the time. And Craig will show later this panel, which he's sacrificing some of his power from his house today. The light from in here is actually being collected, and the little microinverter in back is flashing red saying, I'm getting light, but you're not hooking me up to anything, so what are you doing? So now it's not flashing because you're facing the dark.
Here's a wire.
Wonder you have issues on the job.
That's part of the system that you have is while this inverter flashing red now, it is again because it's facing the lights. It doesn't generate any power to the grid. It needs to be connected in order for it to put power out. Even though it's got power going into it, it doesn't have any intelligence to that.
Thanks, Greg. Whoop.
That puts out, that panel takes in volts as the new volts. That connects 240 volts, not 110.
So, and people could do the math working on this with us. So we've gone through all the channels. We looked at finance committee to try to make sure that we're, being as precise as we can. So in 25 years, that will save the church $642,180 and carry the one estimated, but with these assumptions. So that's a pretty good investment, I think. And the SRECs themselves, for doing nothing but pushing electricity to run our church and send it out to the grid, we get another $107,500 over the next 25 years. So that adds up to $749,680. So by doing this, this is revenue we can bring into the church for operating needs. Okay, so this is in red. So we gotta put out a little money to generate money. So I think that's usually what happens. So we have two proposals so far. Craig's been, really great at talking engineering speak to these guys and holding them accountable. So we have two really good sources. We think probably somewhere between 175 to 225,000, and we can negotiate some of this too if we want to. But I think 200,000 is a very good number. Talked about this before. Just want to stress this is not something we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to over the years. No maintenance. And these are just different parts of the system. We have inverters, optimizers, and panels. So we think the total cost will be around $200,000. So what really changed to make this helpful for nonprofits is that in the last year, I hate to even say it because people laugh, but the Inflation Reduction Act made available dollars for incentives for people to do renewable energy, solar being a big part of that. So Zion will get a check from the Treasury for $60,000 on a $200,000 expense by putting solar in. So that's just money that comes right back to us. We've done some work within Creation Care. We haven't done massive fundraising, but we have a pledge of $50,000 to go towards this. So the out-of-pocket cost for Zion is $90,000 to do this. And it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. If we decide to do this, we've got to get on their schedule, and there's milestone payments like any other contract so that, over time you make those payments so you don't have to struggle for one big out-of-pocket cost in the beginning. And if we just come up with this equation, somewhere between year 4 and 5, we expect that it will be fully paid off and it will be pure gravy, so to speak, coming in every month, month after month after month. So just to kind of headline this, so for $90,000, we save $749,680 and or get benefits to that amount. We break even between years 4 and 5, and this is without any additional fundraising. So we do decide to do this, and we want to talk about fundraising to make it even a faster payoff for the church, and people can feel good about helping with this. We could sponsor panels. We're going to have somewhere between 150 to 180 panels, depending on which vendor we go with. So say you sponsored a panel. Just like in the church, we have hymn books. People sponsored those. So, we can even put a little plaque together on the back of the panel, and you can feel good in 25 years when your grandchildren come around and these things are still generating electricity. You can say, hey, we did this. So for $500 over 25 years, it'll deliver $4,165 or a 733% return on your donation, or 29.32% for the next 25 years. I don't know what it will be for years 26 through 50, but it will be. So that's not too bad of a return, you financial people. So if we get them all sponsored, it'd be immediate, which would be the happy path. So we can all aspire. Okay, so this list came from a group when I was at Mennonite, the MCUSA meeting, and there was a group, and there was probably about 50 people. It was like just a workshop of people that attended there that were interested in solar, churches that had installed solar, to talk about what they experienced and what they felt. So there's more. Mennonite Creation Care is sort of like a group that advocates for environmental practices. And this was the current list that they had. She said there's more going on all the time. 40 plus churches that have installed that. As you can see, Pennsylvania, not a lot going on. I know Messiah is looking into it. Not Messiah. Salford, thank you. Salford is looking into it. I don't know exactly where they are at this point. Indiana is crazy. I mean, there's not even a whole lot of incentives in Indiana. It's just that a few people got it started, and everyone learned about how much you save and really how easy it is, and it's just kind of spread. I will say that AMBS has an array. It's very helpful. So does MCC. It has it in several different sites. Just to digress a little, MCC has projects going on in Puerto Rico to bring solar into areas that are just very much at risk and does not have very good opportunities for electricity. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on, even in the Mennonite. Our Amish and conservative brethren are like, they're installing it and using it. So anyway, that's what, other people are doing. So we're not on the bleeding edge of this, but sorry about this mic here. No one's going to confuse me for Taylor Swift, that's for sure. Anyway, so what was the experience of the church when they put it up? Like, what did people say? So they tend to see people are curious, they're interested, they want to know like why the church is doing it and so on. I mean, especially here, it's fairly new. You don't see a lot of solar around here. So I think that's a great way for people to see that Zion's really involved in the community and trying to be good stewardships. And unfortunately, all of our young guys are out rafting. I'm glad they're enjoying it. Younger people tend to be very interested in renewables and care for the environment. And I think it's just a good practice. I mean, stewardship means a lot of things, and I'm talking mostly about finances because many of us, that's what we're most concerned about. But stewardship, that we're spending money on, that we would spend money on something that returns money to the church rather than depreciates or wears out. We could even put signs up to make people aware of why we did this and what it means to us and how community. Every time I turn my head. The other thing that we've seen, and I think part of that is like the Indiana groups, once church members actually see that it works, or they work for a company that has put it in, and they see how much it delivers, they want it too. There was a story, Vermont, I think it was a very small church, and there was a B&B, and like a vacation area across the street, and at first the people were like very worried that they were going to lose business because, oh, you're putting solar up and it's going to be ugly and people won't like it and they're going to be scared. And they said 2-3 years, and they were respectful, they worked at it respectfully, and 2-3 years later that B&B put solar up. Just one little tidbit. I'm sure not everything has all a happy answer, but that one certainly did.
Is that the name they're sharing?
Right. So they also, as part of their ministry, they were going to tithe some of the electricity that they generated and didn't need to Bethany Birch's camp. So that helps out the camp, and they feel like they're giving back to their community, and it's one of the ways that they share their ministry. So yeah, we're a little earlier than 1 o'clock. I mean, that's the main thing. So whatever questions you guys have or comments, I mean, there's a lot we can talk about. So we have that. What's new or a surprise? I would hope there would be some surprise. I'm starting to see hands, which is great, and other benefits that we haven't seen. So first question in the back.
You may have said this, but I might not have heard you. The government's going to give us a rebate for this current time limit that we have to get this done will expire.
Good questions. Yeah, it's actually a check that will come through. You file the paperwork. IRS probably doesn't have the paperwork ready yet, but IRS tends to be slow. As far as I know, there's really no time limit. I think this stuff is all kind of geared towards towards 2030. So it's not like going to disappear in the next month or whatever if we don't do it right this second. But yeah, that's. I mean, that was a surprise they did this, and I'll digress just a little bit. So we had thought before about solar. When I was on the board at DOC, we wanted to put solar in. We were thinking about it. But the way that you really benefited from it was like to set up an arrangement for a for-profit company, and then they could take the depreciation, they could take the 30% rebate, and then sell the electricity back to the school or the church or whatever, and then, negotiate a reduced rate. It's all complicated. So this just takes that whole part out of the equation. It's like you put the thing up, you file the paperwork, and you yell at IRS, and you get your 30% back. So that's how it's supposed to work. Thanks. John?
I'm wondering how you determine the fields you build, because it seems if we have a lot of space, do we overbuild and sell, get more credit?
Yes. That is another point that I didn't even say. So part of what comes with this is if you generate more electricity than you use, the utility is obligated to pay you back for that. Every year you reconcile your accounts. So, so for this year, just for personally in our situation, we were pretty close to even, but we got a check from PP&L for $300 for generating more electricity than we used. So Craig and I both compared notes on like how many panels, how many kilowatt hours we think we needed, like to generate enough power to run the church based on what we did for our homes. And we both came out with about the same number. Like when we were talking about it at Doc, I'm like, well, we got all kinds of space. Let's just overbuild the heck out of this thing and get a bunch of money back. So one of the things that we are looking to do is have some extra racking so that we would want to build it with what we think is going to be the appropriate amount to be like at net zero, so we won't have an electric bill but not generate any extra. But if we have extra racking, we can either add panels to either generate more money if we want to, or say, the church is being used even more frequently than we expected, which would be a good thing. Drawing in more demands for electricity, we can grow the power plant as we need to. So right now we're just sized at like just meeting our. Did that answer what you're? Yeah, okay, thanks. Yes, Tom. Location, where's Craig? I'll let you speak to this. You can say it better.
Let me stand near you, that's okay. Yeah, the location has been sort of under discussion, and we had some other ideas that have come to us through the board or through other meetings we've had. One was to put it in the woods over here by the parking lot, the new parking lot we just put in. And the only thing there is we'd have to clear the woods because it's a space of about 130 feet by maybe 80 feet deep. So the township or the borough requires that those trees get replanted. And we talked to Jay a little bit about that, and he says, well, the easiest way is parking lot down here, but they're approximately 100 feet long. Probably focusing more on the corner now because we don't have any of the clearing to do, and it can be high enough off the grass so that they can mow under it. And then you have to go through the parking lot to get it. So that electricity. Actually, 154 to 152 panels. Where in the woods we have to go. But we have space for 18 from the.
And it shows the stewardship and the creation care when people drive by. It's not.
Yeah.
Yes, Ron.
Just answer why you didn't consider putting it on the roof.
Oh.
The flat roofs are just a problem to begin with. I mean, it's just, they have a 25-year, whatever, 30-year warranty. I mean, that's the other thing that we were looking at is what about the warranty? You know, is Carlisle going to be happy if we start drilling holes in it? Because you're going to have to mount them, you're going to have to put all your stuff in there. So we just eliminated that from a thought because of the roof problems and such. The ground is easier to do. Go ahead, Ron.
So if it is on the ground, what's the potential, and this has anything to do with the validity of solar, but if it's on the ground, it's susceptible to damage, to vandalism, to,
Kids like climbing on the.
yeah. How's that, what protection does the church have or an owner have when it's on the ground and it's accessible?
Well, Barry's going to be looking at the insurance question of how we're covered from liabilities and such. He has that meeting in the end of August this month. But we have not heard of any other churches that have that issue with things that are on the ground. The other thing is, the benefit of the ground is easier maintenance if you do need to replace panels or the optimizers, as what they call, sort of like the inverter. But, you know, you don't have to climb up on the roof to do the maintenance.
Yeah, I'm just thinking protection,
Correct,
safety, protection.
yeah.
Warning signs not to touch it.
Yeah.
On the ground and the roof, permitting would be required to have an engineer come out and make sure that the roof is overweight, and you would possibly have to add more steel and everything on the roof to carry the weight. It's not that heavy, it's a lot.
Yeah. Just so the presentation can hear it, Bob Musselman just basically made a point that there's more complexity with roof. You get into engineering and, you know, multiple vendors weighing in. I mean, we looked at this at Dock and it was the same thing. We had to replace the roof, and again, around here, there's not that many people that have done it. So there was all kinds of fear and loathing about, you know, the roof caving in, and like you said, Bob, structural support and all kinds of other stuff where panels really aren't that super heavy. And the one benefit they would have is mostly the reason that the roofs wear out is all the UV hitting it all the time. Well, the panels would soak up the UV, and the roofs theoretically should last longer, but it's just more complicated. And the other thing too is, I know people will be concerned about aesthetics, rightly so, but when they're out in the field, like you can put evergreens behind them. You don't want to put them in front of them because you want the sun to hit them. But people are, I guess, are used to the air handlers on the roof here, but like if we'd put 140 panels on the roof pitched at a steep angle, I think some people it might take a while to get used to it. But for practical reasons, simplicity, ground mounts really the way to go. And since the panels would be all the way up by the church, I mean, I guess if people really wanted to throw a rock or a brick at it and do damage, they can. But they're not going to be right by the street anywhere. So you'd have to consciously decide to come up here and want to be malicious. I know when we put ours up, we were thinking about hail and wind and all that stuff. It's like we're out in the field, out in, well, some of you know where we live, and so we got 96 panels out. Why this makes so much noise? We have 96 panels out there, and we have not had any problems with hail or anything else. So, I mean, it can happen. That's why we have liability insurance. That's why we have property insurance. But yeah, I don't know that we'd want to put a fence around it. I'm just speaking personally, so.
One other thing on the orientation of why the field is, our true south is actually 45 degrees off the church. In other words, all the roofs are really facing more east than they are south. So we have to push them to be into the southerly direction in order to get the 100% out of it.
Ron?
One other question. The borough, I'm assuming, allows for installation on ground?
So far that we know, yes.
Yeah.
The whole permit with the borough has to be part of the process, yes.
So you haven't checked that out yet?
Not our specific application yet.
The companies actually take care of all the permitting and stuff, which is cool. So go ahead, Bob.
I did talk to the septic inspector, and he did not
Right.
mention that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
It wouldn't how far off the property.
Mm. Yeah, Dylan.
Just a general question on like timeline. So like, let's say they would start, would it be like a month until they're up and running, 2 months, 3 months? Just curious, like how long the installation process takes.
Well, first off, we had that nice joke during the sermon about Amish. Well, right now, everybody in Lancaster is keeping all the contractors busy because as soon as the electric bills went up, they all said, we're going off electricity. So they are busy now, probably 6 to 7 months out. But once they start, it's a 2-week window. And the nice thing about the Inflation Act, that $60,000, that can either be 30%, it could be 40%. It all depends on how it finally gets defined. If it's more U.S. content, then you can get an extra 10%. Problem with U.S. content is these are not manufactured in the U.S. We all know that's not how things are made right now. But they're defining that a little bit closer, that it could go to 40%. They're not guaranteeing that. And one of the contractors is actually saying, we don't owe the $60,000 until we get paid by the government. So they will hold that invoice until the payment comes in, which is a benefit.
Some of that law, there are companies building solar cell
Right.
plants and stuff all over the country. You're hearing in the news every day.
Yeah, First Solar is a big company, and they're putting like 4 manufacturing plants together. So they're, what's that?
Just so you don't get a windmill.
That's next up, John. That's next week's presentation. So the other thing is the microinverters, which we probably won't use in this installation, but like for both Craig's and I personal use, the inverters get the same benefit. So Enphase, the company we use, is generating 4 manufacturing plants for production. So it's bringing this whole industry is bringing jobs. It's kind of the next thing. Rudy.
Yeah, to get into the weeds a little, and I think we discussed a little bit at the property committee on this. You guys did your calculations on your systems, which are single phase. We have a 3-phase system. You guys get any of these solar companies to collaborate with your figures so these numbers don't change?
Yeah.
It could go up considerably.
No, the inverters that we're getting are actually specific for 208. Yes, the 3-phase. Yep. Yep. Oh, I think each one of them actually is installing 2. They're each 50 kilowatt, whatever the.
What, the inverters?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're big, and they will be in the building. The DC power is going to come from the field.
Right.
So that can't be vandalized from the standpoint. The only thing that's out in the field is the panel themselves, and what they call an optimizer.
Different when you, yeah.
Yeah, the optimizer they call is the same as the inverter. Optimizers give the ability for you to see how the panels are performing on the internet. Like right now, if Jim and I brought up our site, you would be able to see that it's generating power right now, and you see the power curve. That's communicated from the inverters or the optimizers. And one of the contractors is even going to be our broker, could be our broker for the SRECs. In other words, you have a broker that you set up in order to get paid. You don't have to do any of that paperwork to get the payment. Jim and I both use a company called Knollwood over in Jersey, and they do all the states around. I mean, we were getting it from Washington, D.C., Ohio. We're now Pennsylvania. Jim's always been Pennsylvania. But yeah, you have a broker that takes care of that for you.
Okay, yeah.
How long does the after panels hold power if you have no sun for 2 weeks? Which isn't going to happen, but.
Well, we don't have any battery backup, so if, I mean, that would be a dream to have a, battery backup and then store the power and then use it at night and stuff and be either pretty much fully off the grid, but no.
Problems at home?
No, I mean, we're connected to the grid, so if it's a cloudy day or rainy or whatever, or nighttime, we just pull it off the grid.
Yeah. So if the grid is down, your power's down. They only generate power when the grid is up. Now, in our case, we have at our house, I have 3 panels. These are 200-watt panels on 3 batteries. And when we lose our power from Pico, which we lose like last 2 weeks, we've lost twice. We just turn the batteries on and they last us the whole day. As long as the sun's out, they generate enough.
If it's cloudy.
Then you don't generate 100%. If we showed you the curves, the curve would just be a little lower, up and down, sawtooth. But as the sun comes out, you'll plateau up to your maximum output, like this would put out 199 watts, and when the sun's out. If it's not, maybe 50 watts, you'll get less. You can have 3 days go by, and you won't get anything hardly.
That's what I mean, it holds.
Yeah, no, it doesn't hold power, no.
Yeah. If you, I mean, the part that takes some getting used to is that, like I said, the meter runs backwards. So when you're generating more than you use, it goes back to PP&L. They've got, I mean, your own system keeps track of what you've generated, but the feed goes back to PP&L. They know that extra is generated, and you basically have a bank account. So all during the summer, we generate way more than we use. In the wintertime, we generate less than we use, and then it's just like, you know, a check, you know, it's debited from our account, and then it evens up at the end of the year. Craig mentioned about the optimizers allowing you to look at each solar panel and see what it's generating. I mean, some of the sites like MCC and Ephrata has a big screen. Other sites have it too, which shows like how much power has been generated. You can see each panel and what's, you know, how much is generated, and it's, you know, it's interesting. You can actually see, I mean, other than the physical structure, you don't see anything. But having that kind of is both an educational thing and something for awareness to see that, yes, this thing, you know, this thing is working and paying off. That's kind of another benefit.
One other technical detail, as Jim said, I'm working with the guys on the quotes, is we also have a power requirement for the barn. It's actually on a separate service. That's its own meter. We pay like $40 a month for the barn electric. While the solar panels are down here and connected to the church, if you live within a 2-mile radius of the church, we can pay your electric bill. So we pay the barn through the electric generated at the church. Yeah.
We're within 2 miles.
Oh, there you go. Then we need you to donate some more panels.
I was going to say about 50 panels sponsorship by the Musselman family should work out well. I know it's just about time to go, and so this is unaudited. This is just like it's real math. But if we look at this, I mean, one of the big concerns we have is our church membership is not growing as much as we'd like. We all know that. Our facility is aging. There's a lot of work that we want to do here at the church. But assuming with our assumptions and our thesis, so we get close to $750,000 over the next 25 years. This is in the budget. MEF grants will total $875. The annual budget over the next 25 years at 10,000 apiece is $250,000. This brings us close to $2 million, $1.8 million. And so the current spreadsheet of all the property projects is $1,565,710. So if we do all this and we keep to those numbers, we'd end up with $308,000 extra to meet the needs here of the building projects. So, I mean, that's the math. Things change. We'll have more stuff that we'll want to spend money on, some things we won't want to spend money on, but you take the $749,680 out of the equation and you still got a problem to solve. So I'm only speaking as a church member. I'm not on the property committee. I'm not on the finance committee, but this is the math. Michael.
I'm probably the only one in this room that's going to ask this question, but I'm a little bit more toward Vermont here when I say that the aesthetics to me, I guess, is the cost that if it did go in the woods, what would that be? I'm not a huge fan of it being involved in it, and I know there's difficulties here and there, but...
Well, we estimated, what, $30,000 to $50,000 to clear the woods.
It's another $30,000 more than what the others would be.
Because of the longevity of how long they're there, and that's just my question. You know?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, this is all what we're here to think about.
How does snow affect your
Snow? The last couple years, there Hasn't been much. Now, maybe once we get solar in, we'll have more snow, and then we'll worry about it. No, what,
Does
so,
somebody have to clean those panels?
you don't have to. Like, I usually put my snowsuit on because usually after a big snow, it's sunny and clear, and it just annoys me to no end that I've got 96 panels covered with snow. So I have like a little squeegee and go out there and take the snow off. And in the wintertime, you're not generating as much energy as you do like in April, May, June, July, August anyway, but still, it's just a matter of, you know, I got a machine and it doesn't work, and I want that electricity, so it gives me exercise too.
Dirty?
What's that?
Do they get dirty at all? Or-
They do. I mean, we never clean ours. The rain comes through and basically washes them off. Some people do. Some people clean them off.
My experience was I really complained to Gail. She has bird feeders, which means they have a lot of birds. When we had that 5 week of drought, no rain this spring, I could not understand why the panels were getting so dirty all the time from the birds. Well, when the rain started, they all got cleaned again. So yeah, you don't even have to worry about it when you don't get rain. It keeps them pretty clean.
Bonnie Moyer.
You know, I think if you buy a panel, it's your responsibility to clean it.
Or you can pay a little extra and we'll get someone to clean them for you. Mike.
For these, can you, like, this panel will be out in the field, is it this height, or would it be then two of them?
No, it could be, we're thinking it's going to be 3 or 4 rows. We haven't finalized the actual, the layout yet.
3 or 4 was high?
3 or 4 rows high on a 40-degree angle. It's not that high. I mean, again, we want to keep them up off the ground so we can mow under. So each row is going to get higher and higher. They're not going to be short. It could be 13 feet up in the air.
Sounds like more money for you.
I just meant, because yesterday I came back from the mountains and I saw a place that had them, but they were all relatively low to the ground, so it wasn't this height thing.
Depends on how high we start the first row on, that's all.
Bob.
Question on the extracts.
Yeah.
From what I understand, so it's basically like playing the stock market for that fund. So as more and more solar goes in, do you see that SREX dropping or going up?
The question is, I'm not sure. They've been around this for the last 10 years. If we get this bill passed, and it's going to provide for a lot more energy requirements, they'll go up for everybody. So, I mean, I can't say. I think it's probably less risky than the stock market, I would say. But yeah, they do fluctuate a little bit. They've been as low as, 20? They've been as high as, I forget how much some of ours were.
We're one of the lowest states in the area, because like I said, Washington DC was $200 a wreck.
Yeah,
Now it's-
Jersey
now it's
too.
on-
I mean,
yeah.
we'd be like,
Yeah.
I'd be in the energy renewal business if I
Yeah,
lived
the-
in Jersey or New York.
The other thing that's bad now is today is you can't go out of state. The broker can only broker power in the state you live in. Back when I put it in 2009, I could broker in any state.
But that helped us with Pennsylvania with the SREX, because originally people were North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, whatever, and then they were like, they were the ones that that the utilities were buying from because there was bigger supply. And then they closed it off so that you only get SREX in Pennsylvania if you generate in Pennsylvania. So that's helped stabilize it at around $40.
Well, I know Arizona, a few of the others, some, they had quit giving me back because they couldn't support the infrastructure standard on it. Now, I know there's a big deal, and I don't know, that was years ago, I don't know if they started that up again. You know what I'm talking about?
Each state has different laws, and not to get into the whole politics, you get utility companies, like, they hate this because that's their business. So anyone who puts up solar, you don't have to pay them. Yeah. John, no? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just real quick. Yeah, I don't need that. Just in case you're wondering, where are we at on this, and what are the next steps? Use the mic.
They want you to use mine.
Okay. How's it working?
You can just hold up to that, this thing.
Okay. All right, just in case we were wondering, okay, now what are the next steps? Where are we at? The board heard a presentation similar to this a while ago, and we said, yeah, it sounds really good. Let's see if let's just go further and see what else happens. Let's talk to finance, let's talk to property to make sure a lot of people are talking. I keep thinking back of the pavilion when we thought it was a great idea until we talked to the congregation and they went, nah, we don't want it. So that was the response. So let's go the other way. Let's kind of work it up through. What I really like is this came from the congregation. So it's building momentum, it's building up, but we want more information. So then they talk with finance committee, they've met with property committee to try to gather some more questions, get things answered. So now we're looking at, what do you guys want? What questions will you have? Are you interested in it? Are you not interested in it? Is it something we should pursue? I think the $90,000 would probably be a